Casey TMO, I don't actually need to really say how they used to treat us, because I think everybody knows, in our community, everybody knows, because they've had to face up to the reality of what these people were doing to us.
The loss of 72 lives in Grenfell Tower could have easily been avoided had they listened to the rebel residents instead of putting money before life.
Module 3 will expose those who were responsible for our safety and who had let us down. It will show they never had up-to-date records of who lived in Grenfell Tower, and also never had records of who were disabled and their needs.
They moved people into the tower that they knew they were disabled, put them on all the floors there, and they didn't care about them. Their welfare wasn't their priority. Health and safety wasn't their priority. Just running us down to the ground was their priority. Just rebel residents, that are just making noise. So they didn't care about disabled people, they didn't care about anybody.
It was not like a way of, okay, right, people have been living here for so many years, people do grow older, people do have difficulties in their way they move, in the way they walk, they move around. So is this still the case to have so many old residents in high floors in a tower like this, without a proper plan to evacuate just in case? This is something that I would expect a landlord to consider.
So having the TMO as a landlord, I can only describe as being a victim of bullying. It was like being invisible in our own homes.
The way to intimidate you is to try to see if there is a little gap in the tenancy. Maybe you didn't pay the rent for a month, maybe you didn't pay the council tax for a week, or God knows what, in order to make you vulnerable. So instead of helping you, they're trying to push you into the cliff.
There is a culture of contempt and murder being woven in to the daily actions of these so-called landlords.
They had a very subtle and gentle way of bullying people and be part of this. Yes, warnings, signals were sent to them but were not perceived, and look what happened. If only they had listened.
And they failed, they failed big time.
They changed their ideas according to their strategy, and the strategy was to save money, basically.
For those that don't know, Notting Barnes, also known as Notting Dell, or as we know it as Latimer, is an area in West London which is predominantly social housing, unlike down the road in Notting Hill, where you'd find all the millionaires' mansions.
We've got houses 5 minutes from here, or 10 minutes from Grenfell, and that costs over £200 million. And lots of £100 million. The average price of a property, the average is £1.377 million. So we've got a high percentage of empty properties in our borough because the dirty money has come in, but the return, they won't have anybody live in them, but the return on that property is astronomical. If you've ripped off your country or you've done dirty, corrupt things around the world, all you need to do to get a better return than putting your money in the bank, which will be audited, is to pump it into the Royal Borough of Kensington Chelsea and buy a property. And it's changed the dynamics. There used to be communities, but now a lot of the places are sterile, and I think the last bastion of community is North Kensington.
Now, some of you might know, some of you might not, there were plans from the council to basically demolish Latimer to build new unaffordable homes for the rich and destroy our already thriving community. RB Casey had commissioned urban initiatives to propose this new high-quality neighbourhood. They admitted most homes would be lost due to this development, and they would have added an extension through to White City. We only have to look over the Westway to see part of this redevelopment plan with Westfield and the new unaffordable homes that are being built in White City right now.
They had their master plan to run down the estates, to move people out, to not put the amenities in, not to refurbish, not to do any of the basic maintenance, and that's when the decline of the estates, from Lancaster West Estates, Silchester, Wallington, all the estates around the area that were undesirable to these property developers who had their master plan of getting rid of social housing.
Fortunately, economic factors had got in the way of that plan for the development in Latimer, But instead, they turned around and done other things like dress up Grenfell Tower in highly flammable cladding, which we didn't ask for, just to make the area look nice.
Okay, the tower was refurbished, yeah? And obviously the tower, why was it refurbished as well? Because it had to look good. You know, it had to have a positive impact on people eventually moving and wanted to invest money in that area.
Those that opposed this redevelopment, we were threatened, silenced, and even threatened with eviction to keep our mouths closed.
You know, we got the impression, yes, that by doing this, okay, it looks nice and it looks, you know, energy efficient as well. So it's fresh in summertime and it's warm in wintertime, right? Because of the insulation that you put in. But then you realize what sort of insulation they put, what sort of toxic materials they have put into the tower, the cheapest ever available, in order to stay within the budget and to try to cut down on cost as much as possible. Nobody went through with us after the refurbishment. Nobody went through a evacuation plan in case of. Nobody explained to us, okay, look, this is changed, and in case of fire, this is what you have to do, and this is what you have to not to do. And you're talking to a person that, okay, still fit, you know, or my son is fit. But what about people in the higher floors and people disabled?
They all need to be held accountable. You know, when you've got people in your care, decisions that you make are very important.
This blatant disregard for human life saw innocent people killed in Lakanal House, and nothing has been done by the government since then to make any changes to stop something like that happening again. The loss of 72 lives in Grenfell could have been avoided easily if only the council and the TMO would have listened to these so-called rebel residents and put our concerns and our safety first.
Moving forward, we need somebody independent to listen to our complaints, instead of pushing them to one side and acting like we don't exist. This is what we've asked for in the Social Housing White Paper. This paper needs to be included in the Queen's speech in May, otherwise we'll be waiting at least another 18 months for the recommendations to be implemented, which takes us to over 5 years since the fire happened. If it isn't included next month, not only have they failed us, but they've failed the nation horribly.
And it's already, 4 years now, 4 years that we've been fighting every single day. And of course, we're just being appeased, because there's other forces at play.
If you say that you would do something, if you promise that you would do something, you have to follow it up and you have to do it. And don't forget that we all pay our taxes, we all pay our dues, and we have to be considered, we have to be listened to.
We're still fighting for criminal convictions. There have been none yet. At the bare minimum, we want to see change in the legislation. People's safety should come first in social housing. They act like they don't care.
I've seen prime ministers, housing ministers, secretaries of state, all put their hands up, promise the world to us and do nothing. And they have an opportunity now to do right by this country. But, I'm not too optimistic, because the powers are what we're fighting against are huge. There's countries around the world that can't fight the British government, and how about a few hundred people, trying to, make some tangible changes for the best.
It is so important that we have an independent body to be able to hear our complaints, to hear our concerns, and for them to be dealt with. If it weren't for the rebel residents, there would have been no opposition to the deadly redevelopment in our community. There is nothing more they love than when we are silent, and there's nothing more they hate than when we use our voice. That's why we are setting up rebel residents at grenfellunited.org. We want to hear from you, your voice, your story. There's voices all across the country that need to be heard. So let's come together, fight for change together.